So first off, what is your name and how old are you?
I'm Andrew Noto Hami Projo. I am 22 years old, 23 by the time this paper is written.
Okay, and what is your ethnicity?
I am Indonesian.
Indonesian, okay. And how long have you been in Polynesian dance?
I have been in Polynesian dance for 5 years.
Okay, so can you tell me exactly what is Polynesian dance?
Polynesian dance as what we do, or Polynesian dance in general?
Both. I mean, I'm more interested in like what it is in general,
Okay.
but later you can relate it to our club.
Polynesian dance is a celebration of the culture of all the minority islands in the Pacific Ocean. This includes Hawaii, Tahiti, New Zealand, among other islands, Easter Islands included in the equation. And it's just a way that the minority groups get together and they celebrate their way of life, and it's a way of preserving tradition and culture through dance.
Through dance, okay. And now what do the dances mean, or the music played, what does it mean? Are there stories that are told, or?
There is always a story told. Most groups get it wrong when they think that it's just a series of movements. It's actually extremely difficult to make these dances properly, because each dance tells a story and you don't want to mix up moves. You can always fake it, but it has less meaning. So the drum beat for the Tahitians specifically is basically the beat of life.
Okay.
It's the rhythm of the way they do things, and all of the meaning is spoken through the drum beats and the rhythm.
So it's spoken through the music, not through the actual movements of the dancers?
It's a correlation of both. I mean, you don't move your heart moves you, right? So it's the same way as in dance. Dance dictates the way, dictates the flow, and you will translate the flow of your beat into movement.
And then for the songs, like, are they generally about like war, or like what are they about? Like what topics?
Tahitians use the music to celebrate life.
Okay.
They use this, the women dances celebrate life. They usually celebrate happiness, tales of romance. Early on, Polynesians just were really obsessed with sex. So that's what a lot of the early stories, actually a couple of our dances are about, sex and romance. The guys use it as a way not only to express their feelings, but also to prepare for war. Some of the movements we do, called especially the paute, was actually invented as a method to train men's legs to climb over mountains, which the islands are full of. So. Okay,
great. And like who typically performs in, like, can it be anyone within like that village, or like within the culture, or should it only be performed by certain people?
In the culture, everyone performs.
Oh, okay.
It's in the States and in most of the world, we see it as a form of entertainment, but back on the islands, it's actually a way of life, where like people would get together at the community centers, someone would have the drum, and they would actually just start drumming and dance, like have dance-offs. And there's actually quite a bit of stories and recordings of like young men just like showing off to all the girls, just getting up and dancing like how we would to a boombox.
And have those practices changed nowadays in modern times, or do they still do the same thing?
In modern times, it's mainly seen as a form of entertainment or posterity.
Even on the islands?
On the islands, I haven't been to the islands and like witnessed this firsthand, but I've heard plenty of stories from people that have been to the islands saying that this still goes on like Tahiti. I know the haka, which is the New Zealand, it is still a way of life. They perform the hakas at birthdays and funerals, but in Greater America and the westernized world, it's mainly a form of entertainment and profit.
Okay. And then for the dances, what languages are used typically?
The dances, it depends on which island we're celebrating.
Okay.
We do keep our dances entirely cultural, which is why you don't see new dances very often. Tahitian dances are spoken in Tahitian, all the hakas are spoken in Maori, the slap dance is spoken in Samoan.
Okay, great. And then what about costumes? Like, what role do they play in the performance?
Costumes is a kind of an iffy little bit. It's hard to stay cultural with the costumes on a budget, because the costumes that were made culturally were specific to the island because those were the only materials they can gather. So for us to replicate those, if we wanted to replicate every island, that would be quite difficult. But they have some similarities between them, like shells and skirts were primarily used, which is why you see most Polynesian groups wearing cloth skirts and shell necklaces. On top of that, various types of bead skirts using use of leaves. All of those we try to replicate, but we cannot to the extent of the original culture because of monetary reasons.
What about, are they specific to like hula and Tahitian? Like, is there a main difference between the two dances and their costumes?
Yes, there is a huge difference. When you get down to the details, a lot of it is dictated by, the costume you use is dictated by the culture you're celebrating. Tahitians are fast-paced, they love the hips. It's all about hitting hard, sweating, getting out your emotions. So they wear big skirts, they wear hip belts that emphasize the hips, whereas hula is about the flow. So all of their costumes are flowy, they adapt more of a dress style, or their skirts are more poofy towards the bottom rather than at the waist, so that you can see the flow of the hips and how it comes from like the top towards the bottom of the feet.
Okay, great. And then how does like our club reflect Polynesian culture? Or do you think we do a good job of preserving the culture or explaining it to others?
Our club has, we have different priorities. Obviously, our first priority is social, which actually embodies most of the Polynesian spirit, which is family. So in that regard, we follow it pretty close. As far as culture goes, the university system's on a cycle, so we can't get too in-depth with like, we always have to reteach and reteach as a new generation comes in. So there's a limit to the amount of skill and detail we can put in everything, but we do try to, all of our dances are very close to the originals. We try very hard not to overstep our cultural bounds, like pretending that we are actual Polynesians, but we, as a whole, we try to stay very close to the way it was originally, and I'd say we do as good a job as we can without forcing people to do things.
Yeah. And then as for the dances that we learn here in club ourselves, are they all dances that have just been passed down, or like do members of the club research dances?
They are passed down, shared, and created. Okay. The ones that are passed down, we had a couple, like most of the ones that are passed down are actually created from original Polynesian groups, and then we actually asked for permission from Polynesian groups to use their dances again. Because culturally you're not allowed to steal things. Same thing with dances shared. If we see a dance online that we particularly like and we really want to use certain moves, we actually ask before we use things. And as far as creation goes, a lot of our dancers are actually well versed in the movements and the meaning behind the moves, so a couple of us are able to create dances that are still meaningful towards the culture.
Okay, great. And what exactly is your role within the club? Both like, it could be politically and like just participation.
My role in the club, since I am pretty much the oldest member, is just to be the old guy. Club is pretty much a family structure, and we do have an unspoken hierarchy where it's just you defer to the person with the most knowledge and experience, and in that case, it's me. Before me, there's always been someone that's an older member that takes the role. We usually refer to it as the old guy or the old girl or mom. So